and this is Alyssa Jones. We are the co-chairs of the 2021 annual fundraising event for the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon. We thank you all for being with us this evening, and we'd also like to extend a big thank you to the board of the Historical Society and also to our truly hardworking event committee who made the option and the program you're watching tonight possible. We have a really wonderful program planned for you this evening, and over the next 45 minutes or so, you'll be watching some different segments covering a variety of topics and stories. This includes an exclusive tour of the second floor of the Historical Society building, the History Center, which was recently renovated to be important collection storage for the History Center. We are also presenting the 2021 History Maker Award to St. Clair Health. And the last part of the program is a wonderful segment about the history and the development of St. Clair Hospital.
That's right, Amanda. And while tonight's event is virtual, we are excited to announce that the History Center is open. Please visit us on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. or contact us to schedule a visit. Volunteers at the Historical Society have been busy this year. We had the privilege of partnering with the high school last spring for an uptown scavenger hunt. And we are so pleased to have the second grade walking tours back. This month, we helped host almost 500 students on this famous walking tour. I was able to tag along on one of the tours, and seeing all the happy second graders chatting away with the docents was a great reminder of why we volunteer for the History Center. The Historical Society has also been a proud partner for a variety of events this year with the Mount Lebanon Library, the Dennis Theater, the Veterans Breakfast Club, and the Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation. Amanda, our community has donated some amazing auction items. Please visit the auction tab and bid generously, because the funds raised tonight will keep the lights on and the doors open at our History Center for the next year. We welcome everyone to purchase or renew your membership and join us for a visit or a special event very soon.
Thanks, Alyssa. And thanks to all of you again for being with us. We're so glad to have you here. We're so glad to have your support. I know that Alyssa and I will be bidding on auction items as we watch the program this evening. The auction will close around 8 o'clock tonight, about the time that the program finishes up. So now is your chance to make your bids and donations and spend the evening with us and support the Historical Society. And we thank you for that. With that, we'll start the program with a message from Jeff Hurd, who is the president of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to our program. My name is Jeff Hurd, and it has been my honor to serve this year as president of the hardworking Board of Trustees of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon. Tonight is a special event for the Society. It is an opportunity to gather with those who have an interest in the history of Mount Lebanon, strong enough to want to learn more and support us in our efforts to collect artifacts and memories, to keep them safely, and to provide exhibits, programs, tours, and other activities to help people now and in the future to learn more about our common heritage. This has been a good year for the Society. We have worked safely to resume many of the activities that were familiar before the onset of the pandemic. We have improved the History Center, and we have learned many new and interesting things about our community. Here are a few examples. A young man contacted us to check out family lore. That his grandfather, a builder, when moving his grandmother, built a home in Mount Lebanon with unique features. He was able to provide us with the address, and we were able to determine from the original drawings of the house that indeed it was designed with a swimming pool in the basement. In reviewing the list of Mount Lebanon war casualties, one of the two names from World War I that was difficult to research became apparent that we had the first and middle names transposed. Once set in the right order, a registration card was soon found. William George Hackney, a black man, originally from North Carolina, lived on Alfred Street, which now is the street that borders with Clearview Commons. He served in the U.S. military and died of disease during the war. His name is listed on the memorial at the entrance to the Mount Lebanon Cemetery, which was erected shortly after the war. And a Girl Scout doing a project on Pinecone Park. A parklet in Sunset Hills came to us for information. We looked up the 1934 edition of the Hopkins map, which has tremendous amounts of detail. The park was shown on that map. Now there is a natural spring in the park. Currently, water from the spring is captured underground and diverted to a stormwater basin. In 1934, apparently the spring ran above ground and was shown on the Hopkins map along with its name, the Fountain of Youth. All these, I submit, are proof of President Harry Truman's observation: the only new thing in the world is the history that you don't know. Tonight, the focus of the program is to recognize St. Clair Health, an extremely important part of our community and one whose history may interest you. We will also report on the accomplishments of the Society over the past year. We look forward to a great year in 2022, and we need your help. Please take some time to visit the History Center, attend a presentation, and take a tour. Please review and bid on the wonderful auction items, and this is the last night for that. Please establish or renew your membership, and we have a special offer related to this event for that too. Please consider donating to our capital campaign. Thus far, we have received and invested $750,000 in the History Center. We still have work to do. Our next project will be to create an open area on the second floor overlooking Washington Road. And there are more projects after that. Thank you to the auction donors and to all of our supporters. And importantly, please join me in thanking those who organized this event. Co-chairs Amanda Gillen and Alyssa Jones and their wonderful and hardworking committee. Karen Cahall, Jody Kobe, Kathy Hayes, Susan Morgans, Beth Romig, and Peggy Wojcik. And now, let's proceed.
Hi, my name's Dave Frankowski. I'm a member of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon. I've been a member for, I'm not even going to guess how many years. I can't remember. And besides being a member, I've also been a volunteer here at the History Center. And more recently, I'm now on the board of the Historical Society, and I'm enjoying being part of that and working with everyone there. Being a volunteer here over time, I could say if I had $1 for every person that came in and said, "Do you have a picture of my house?" we'd have a lot of dollars. And we have a lot of pictures of people's houses, but we just don't have them right available that we can pull them out. But when people do ask if we have something of their house, and a lot of times they're asked not only for a picture of their house, they're looking for plans of their house. I don't think a lot of those things maybe even exist. Things like plans get lost and whatever. But lately, when folks come up and ask for something about their house, I can steer them to the building permits that the municipality had and now are part of our archives. And oftentimes I'll say, well, where do you live? We have an index that I can go through and find. Now, the building permits come in two forms. The older ones are actually paper. The newer ones are actually have been photographed or on microfiche. So we look through the index, and the index kind of lets us know. So they're easy to find. The index lets us know whether it's paper or microfiche. So for example, I'm looking at this one here, and I see a number, and I happen to have the address, and it gives the number. So I can check it right in here. So as I go through, okay, and we have application for a building permit. The building permits show not only the address, and in some cases the addresses have changed over years because streets become renumbered, renamed, but it has the original owner, the house, the contractor. This one doesn't, but a lot of times on the reverse, they have very specific things, the number of rooms, the dimensions of the rooms, what the house was made of, a lot of really interesting information, which a lot of people want, especially if they're trying to recreate something in their home. So if it's not in this form, then it's in the microfiche, and I can find that, and they can look at that on the screen. On a paper building permit, we can make a copy of that, and they have that to take home. And believe me, some folks feel like they've hit gold when they see that. We can't do that on the microfiche. We don't have a way to print those up, but we can let people take photos of it. And for instance, there was a lady that came up, and she wanted to know, we had it on there. She was fine. She loved what she got because they were planning on doing something, and it was very specific. And she found it to be very helpful. Everyone that gets one loves it. And so that's a resource that we have here in the History Center, among other things. One of the other resources we have is we have yearbooks from Mount Lebanon High School, and those are also very popular. When the folks come up, they love looking through kids finding their parents, people finding friends, relatives, cousins, who knows who, students looking for their teachers from long ago. And one afternoon we had 3 or 4 people that they were just giggling and laughing and really enjoying themselves and finding out things. And that's what you can do. You can find out things here. And I think that's a resource and a service we have to the community. And your support through the auction helps keep this going, because that's a necessary part of it. I want to say the other thing is besides myself, there are many other folks who help volunteer, and we're always in need of more people to be able to do this. But we do have our hours currently are only on Saturday from 9 to 3. And we used to be 3 days a week prior to COVID, but we're now at least on Saturdays, and in the future we're hoping to expand that. And we hope to see you up here, and maybe you can explore some of the treasures we have.
Hi, I'm Jim Wojcik. I'm a past president of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon and a current member of the board. And I'm also the chairman of the capital campaign that's going on right now to raise funds for the renovations of the History Center. I'm coming from the second floor, which is non-public space that not everybody gets to see. So this is really special that you're going to be here tonight to see this. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here with us. And please, please take a look at those wonderful auction items that you can bid on and donate and help us in our efforts to maintain this beautiful facility that we have. I also want to take time to thank those of you who contributed to our capital campaign, because without your support, we couldn't be doing any of this stuff, even showing you now what is the project that we've just finished here on the second floor. So come on in with me, and I'll tell you about the space. We're now standing in the the second floor of the Historical Society. This space was not original to the building when the building was built in the late 20s, early 1930s, but was added on by the third family that lived here and owned the house in 1949. They had 4 kids, and so that's Dr. Donald McMillan and his wife Christine. So they added 3 bedrooms and a bathroom up here on the second floor. And who doesn't need a second bathroom in Mount Lebanon, okay? So that's what they did. And so this was their space. When we took it over, because of the leaky roof and other things, there was all kinds of like holes in the ceiling. When we took out and did the electrical work, we had holes in the wall and what have you. So this space we want to use as non-public space for our collection and objects and artifacts that are not on display, that we can keep them up here in a very organized fashion, and so that they could then be in a conditioned space so that the temperature we can control and actually care for them really well. So what we did was basically we put in insulation in the walls, we put plastering, we replastered the walls and the ceilings, and then we needed to paint. And what was really neat about the painting was that we had an Eagle Scout, Jojo Toledo, approach us and said, "Hey, I need an Eagle Scout project. Do you have something in mind?" And right away, my face lit up because I said, "Oh, free labor." So basically with his team of scouts, and then with some very dedicated Historical Society volunteers, we managed to paint this entire space in one weekend in all the rooms. And so, and they did a great job. So that was done. Then we needed new carpeting to be installed. And then finally we had to have the air conditioning installed. And all this work just got completed a few weeks ago. So now Mike Cahill and his collection committee is now starting the process of moving all our artifacts and objects that have been donated over the years by people in the community up here to organize it and make it easily retrievable. So thank you so much for your time, for seeing this space. If you want to see it directly, come contact me. I'll take you around and we'll talk about some really great naming opportunities. Hi, what I want to do right now is show you a sneak peek of the next phase of what we have planned in the renovations here at the History Center. So please follow me out onto the second floor deck overlooking Washington Road here at the Historical Society. Here we are on the second floor overlook deck of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon on Washington Road. And this is just a wonderful space. If you can envision what we have planned for up here is to renovate this space, add some lighting, add some flooring, add some landscaping, so that then we can have this space for small group events to come up here, have their cocktails or their wine and cheese, and then go into the History Center and have their meeting or their baby shower or whatever event it is. We look at this as a potential to expand the offerings that we have to the community and to also be another source of income to help support what we do here. This space is a great naming opportunity that you could have and put your name on this space. For a mere $40,000 commitment to the project, we can get started, complete it, and put your name on it. So if you're really interested in doing this, please contact me and we can make this happen.
Hello, I'm Amanda Gillen, Vice President of the Board of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to an important part of our annual event program, where we present the Historical Society's History Maker Award. On screen, we have Mr. Jeff Hurd, who is president of the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon, and who will be presenting the award today. It is my honor to introduce our guests, Dr. Alan Yeasted and Ms. Joan Masella, who are accepting the award on behalf of St. Clair Health. Dr. Yeasted has practiced internal medicine at St. Clair Hospital since 1978 and was appointed Chief Medical Officer in December of 2000. He served under 2 presidents, and during his tenure, the new emergency department opened. More than 100 new physicians were added to the medical staff, and St. Clair Hospital became one of the top 100 hospitals in the nation. Dr. Yeasted is a graduate of St. Vincent College and the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. He is the former governor of the American College of Physicians and presently serves on the Board of Trustees of the Pennsylvania Medical Society and the Board of Directors of St. Clair Health. Dr. Yeasted resides in Mount Lebanon with his wife and has 5 children, 2 of whom are physicians and 1 of whom is a nurse. And speaking of nurses, I'd also like to introduce Ms. Joan Masella. Ms. Masella retired in 2016 after a career at St. Clair Hospital that began in 1979. Throughout her career, she served as a staff nurse, nurse manager, director, and from 1997 until her retirement, she was the administrative vice president and chief nursing officer. We are so glad to have you both with us. Thank you for being here. And with that, I will turn this over to Mr. Jeff Hurd to speak about and to present our History Maker Award.
Thank you, Amanda. In 2016, the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon established the Mount Lebanon History Maker Award to recognize significant contributions to the Mount Lebanon community made by people and entities. A nomination for this award must be approved by the Board of Trustees of the Society. And traditionally, the award is presented at the Society's annual fall event. Tonight, we're honoring St. Clair Health, which has been an extremely important institution in our community for 7 decades. The founders addressed a critical need, the establishment of a full-featured medical facility in the South Hills where none existed. Unprecedented growth in the area following World War II was underway, generating a tremendous need. St. Clair Health was not the creation of government or an establishment of a private corporation. It was the vision of medical professionals and community leaders, the hard work of the women's auxiliary groups and other supporters, and the generosity of citizens of the area that led to the creation of this institution. The groundbreaking for the building was on October 20th, 1951, 70 years ago yesterday. The doors opened on February 22nd, 1954. The first patient was admitted 1 hour before the official opening time. The first baby was born in the hospital within 24 hours of the opening, one of nearly 1,000 births in that first year. And she was given a middle name, Claire. In the years since its founding, the hospital has continued to grow in capacity and expand services to advance in medical technology and to adapt to the changing role of healthcare in the society. Planning for the first expansion began within a year of the original opening and has proceeded to create the large campus we know today. This year saw the opening of the 6-story, 280,000 square foot Dunlap Family Outpatient Center, the largest expansion in the history of this facility. Certainly, St. Clair Health is an important part of Mount Lebanon and the South Hills. It is the largest employer in Mount Lebanon and the largest healthcare facility in the area. Most importantly, daily, it serves the community that worked to create it, and that community continues to support the work being done. Now, By action of the Board of Trustees representing our membership, the 2021 Mount Lebanon History Maker Award is presented to the medical staff, nurses, and employees of St. Clair Health in recognition of their continuing service to our community, and particularly for all their work to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Congratulations, but more importantly, thanks to St. Clair Health for all that you have done and will do to serve this community now and into the future. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Eusted and Joan Masella to make some comments.
Thank you, Jeff. It's an honor to be here today with Dr. Yasted to accept the 2021 Mount Lebanon History Maker Award on behalf of St. Clair Health. Having been a nurse at St. Clair for almost 37 years, I can certainly attest to the fact that the medical staff, nurses, and employees are extremely deserving of this award. I can also assure you that they will be very grateful and proud of being this year's recipient. Our physicians and nurses are often appropriately highlighted as they are the front line of patient care, and they are to be commended for their heroic efforts over these past 18 months and beyond, which have been extremely challenging and unprecedented. But they would be the first to tell you that without the support of all employees, both professional and ancillary, the outstanding care for which St. Clair Hospital is often recognized would not be possible. It truly is a medical staff and employee culture of respect, teamwork, and collegiality that drives excellent outcomes at the bedside. I'm proud to be part of St. Clair's legacy and doubly proud to be here today to accept this award for all employees of St. Clair Health. Thank you to the Mount Lebanon Historical Society for selecting us as this year's recipient, and a thank you as well to Mount Lebanon for your ongoing support over these many years, which has been so much appreciated. We look forward to continuing to provide quality healthcare to the community and surrounding regions for many years to come. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll turn it to Dr. Yasted.
Thank you, Jen. And I also would like to thank the Mount Lebanon Historical Society for choosing St. Clair Hospital's employees as the History Makers of the Year. Certainly in this troubled time with the pandemic, they have been exceptional in caring for our community. One group that Joan didn't mention that I'd like to call out is the board of directors of our hospital, who have led this organization for the past 60 some years. Many of those men and women have been from the Mount Lebanon community and have been stalwarts in leading us to a very high quality institution, which is now recognized nationally. Also, it's the Mount Lebanon community in general, which has pushed us to maintain and to achieve the quality care that we've been able to achieve here at St. Clair Hospital. We work very closely with the Mount Lebanon administration, with the police department and fire department, and all of our community that surrounds this fine institution. And finally, in closing, again, we'd like to thank the Mount Lebanon Historical Society for choosing us as employees of this community and choosing the St. Clair Hospital organization in general for the 2021 History Maker Award. We are very grateful and proud to have achieved that. Thank you very much.
We are so excited this year to be honoring St. Clair Health. And with me on screen is Mary Kay Paul, who is officially the Manager of Administrative Services at St. Clair Health, but who is also their de facto archivist and certainly a kindred historical spirit, if you will. She is the person who has been working with and taking care of and really learning about the wonderful archival materials that exist at St. Clair Hospital that tell the stories of this really important community resource that we are so happy and proud to be honoring this year with our program and our event. So I want to thank you, Mary Kay, for being with us. We're so excited to have you here to share some of these archival materials, tell some of the stories about the founding of St. Clair Hospital. I had my daughter at St. Clair, and I'm sure probably everybody watching tonight has a wonderful St. Clair story. So I am so happy to have you with us to talk through some of the things I think many of us probably don't know about the hospital.
Thank you, Amanda. It's my pleasure to be here. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of St. Clair Health, and it was the result of 9 years of leadership in the community that started all the way back in the 1940s. But as I was researching this story, I came across this article about the first little Mount Lebanon hospital, which was in 1932. It was staffed by just one nurse, and it was under a physician's direction. I just found it interesting to find this tiny little article. It was a one-room facility in the Mount Lebanon Municipal Building. So that was back in 1932. So fast forward to 1944. And this is a picture of an assembly where they're trying to sell the building of the hospital. So raising the interest was critical because 100% of the funds had to come from the community. So back in 1944, there were no federal funds available. There were no wealthy benefactors lined up to help with the project. The financial responsibility was going to fall squarely on the shoulders of the community. So they had to make sure, the administrators had to make sure they had their backing. At this time, it was an extremely tough sale because World War II was still in progress. And a few of the older community residents had realized, or we had remembered rather, a failed attempt back in the 1920s with the St. Hills or the South Hills General Hospital. That was in Brookline, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So after they were able to get the community on board, they filed for the charter, and the charter was in the paper. There's a picture right there, and it was filed on December 8th, 1944. So how we got here, and the reason why the administrators wanted to build the hospital is that Mount Lebanon was growing extremely fast. They became their own, Mount Lebanon became their own, I guess, township back in 1912, and people just flocked to the area. As you can see in the bottom left-hand side, Bower Hill Road was opening up. The Liberty Tubes had opened up, and that allowed for people to get back and forth through the city more easily. And so Mount Lebanon was just growing by leaps and bounds. Those other articles were just in the paper, and it was advertising homes to be built. So Mount Lebanon's growth just unfolded exponentially. So as that unfolded exponentially, there became a need for a hospital. So the article on the left shows the traffic going into the Liberty Tubes. So because so many people had moved out to the South Hills, now going back into the city where the city hospitals were, there was traffic snarls everywhere. And the article on the right-hand side is evidence of that, where it talks about a gentleman that was on his way to the Pittsburgh hospital, got stuck in traffic, and then apparently passed away. It says at the bottom, his cause of death was pulmonary edema. And you could see way back then, there was actually no HIPAA regulations for that to be printed in the paper. That article was shared to me by Diane Goldschmidt. She was the granddaughter of one of the founding members of the hospital. His name was Arthur Sealhall. And Diane's mother was very active in the Women's Auxiliary. Her name was Mrs. Castelli, and she kept a scrapbook of a lot of the events and newspaper articles. And Diane shared that with me, so I thank her for that. So the next slide is about Dr. Arthur S. Haynes. He was dubbed by many of the board members as the father of the hospital. So he actually spearheaded the whole building project of St. Clair Hospital. He was a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh's medical school back in 1916, and he interned at Columbia Hospital, which was located in Wilkinsburg. He was the international director of the Lions Club. He was an Army veteran of World War I, and he was a member of the Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. So 7 months after the hospital opened up, you can see in that article on the right-hand side that we named our library in his honor. And 67 years later, our library is still called the Dr. Arthur S. Haynes Library. So Dr. Haynes had a very distinguished background. He was very self-motivated, and he was a driven individual. And perhaps maybe one of his motivations was something that I uncovered, that back in December of 1930, his only child, a 9-year-old son, had died of an infection. And at that time, there was no antibiotics. Even though antibiotics had been discovered, they were not being widely used. And so there could be a lot of reasons why he took on such an immense project. You never know what makes people tick, but we're happy that Dr. Haynes did get this ball rolling. So on the next slide, it shows the founding members that Dr. Haynes had assembled. They had elected officers, they had directors, and they also had their first 3 committees. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, there was Eddie Becker, Harry Finley, whose granddaughter still comes to the hospital on occasion, Hugh Kemp, Edward B. Laughlin, which a lot of residents will know, and Arthur Silhall's picture, which was Diane Goldschmidt's grandfather, and then Tom Jolly down at the bottom. So those were just a few of the founding members that Dr. Haynes had assembled. So there's a little bit of a backstory before we talk about St. Clair Hospital, and that was that 20 years prior, they tried to build a hospital in the South Hills, and it didn't go so well. So the hospital that was planned was going to be called the South Hills General Hospital, and that was in 1921. They had filed for a charter and they started their fundraising, had their women's auxiliary together, committees were starting. And early in 1923, the lady in the center, Mrs. Carolyn Harding Vitale, visited Pittsburgh, and she was all in favor of building a hospital in the South Hills. She was endorsing it. She got a lot of publicity. And so her brother was the president of the United States, Warren G. Harding. But shortly after her visit, her brother passed away. And the secretary, the secretary of the Treasury was Andrew W. Mellon at that time. And he decided that the hospital should be named the Warren G. Harding Memorial Hospital. You can see there's a sketch of it down at the bottom there from October 1923. So now everything was up and running for this new hospital to be built, and they bought property in Brookline. But shortly after Warren G. Harding had passed away, his administration was marred in scandal that was uncovered. And so this, as quickly as it changed to the Warren G. Harding Memorial Hospital, it turned back into the South Hills Memorial Hospital. But after years of fundraising and for reasons that I wasn't able to uncover, this hospital never came to be. So getting back to St. Clair Hospital, when the association got together back in February of 1945, they put a number on the hospital for the price of construction, and that would be $735,000. Hard to believe. But they could not build the hospital until at least half of that was raised, which was the $367,500 amount. So that was their target. Once they reached that amount, they figured they could break ground and build the hospital, but it would actually become postponement after postponement after postponement. If you go to the next slide, you can see an architectural sketch that was back in October of 1945. The original architect would unexpectedly pass away, which would also cause more delays. And then the association would have to be in search of a new architect, which they chose a Mount Lebanon-based firm. So that was the original picture there. Following that, they had to purchase the property. So the building site was secured in April of 1945. You can see April 10th there. The board would set their sights on the Troop property, which was located on Bower Hill Road. Bower Hill was considered a very good place to build a hospital since it was located on the bus line. So the Troop property was known as the Lebanon Heights Plan. The owner was willing to sell any part of it to accommodate the hospital construction. Soon the building committee would make an offer to purchase 2/3 of the property for that $21,667. But they didn't have the money at the time, so Mr. Arthur Silhall personally purchased the property and later signed the deed over to the hospital. A little bit later, approximately 2 years, the hospital would reimburse Mr. Silhall for the purchase of the property. So now the hospital construction's ready, the property's bought, and all of a sudden this Hill-Burton Act comes along in 1946, which Harry S. Truman signed into law. So the Hill-Burton Act provided construction grants and loans to communities that could demonstrate viability based on their population and per capita income for the building of healthcare facilities. The concept was to build the hospitals that were needed and where they could be sustainable once the doors open. So the association set their sights on these funds. But the first application failed in 1950, and the second application did not fail in 1951, and they were awarded $600,000. So with $600,000 in their pocket, they delayed groundbreaking once again because they decided to maybe rework the plans and build a bigger, better hospital. So that was the first of many delays. But through all the delays, 9 years of fundraising just moved on. You can see in the first picture there, that is actually a picture of Dr. Haynes. They were starting a door-to-door canvassing project. The middle picture was from a scrapbook. And on the far right was something in the newspaper. It was a cartoon, and it was actually information on the etiquette of how to greet the solicitors when they knocked on your door. So at this time, it was very daunting for the association to make decisions. There was little room for error. Errors would cost money, and the community would not look kindly on recklessness with their money. So they had a daunting task in front of them. And they realized that on the next slide, they probably should ask for some professional guidance. So at this time, they contracted with the American City Bureau of Chicago, and that price tag for 50 weeks of service was $23,500. And after that 50 weeks was over, the ACB had found that the estimate of $735,000 was way too low, and that the repeated appeals to the community appeared that the leadership was desperate, and that too many fundraisers promising breaking ground only to lay time after time would lose the faith of the community. So they had a plan of improvement, and soon the association, which later came to be known as the board of directors, they would continue the fundraising and try to change some of their plans that they had originally had planned based on what the ACB had suggested to them. So here's some fundraising. This shows a piano recital. I believe this may have been, the dates on it, back in 1946. So that was one fundraising event. There would be, next slide, Amanda. There would be boxing shows. That was dated 1947. Father Flanagan's Boys Town Choir would come to the Syria Mosque. And then there would be just article after article in the newspapers, the Post Gazette, the Press, the Dispatch, Mount Lebanon News, Daily Post, Sun Telegraph. All these were Pittsburgh newspapers that were frequently publishing stories about the hospital and their fundraising event. But you can't tell the story about the hospital unless you talk about the Women's Auxiliary. So the Women's Auxiliary is responsible for raising funds for a project. So in the 1940s, the members consisted of females, and they were frequently the wives of the staff or the board members. They would raise funds, but they would have to turn over the money to the board, which were all male, and they were the decision makers on how the money would be spent. So the auxiliaries function much like a board of directors. They voted for their chairperson, the officers, they had regular monthly meetings, they recorded meeting minutes, and they had to adhere to bylaws. So they functioned very much like the board. However, they had no say in how the money would be spent. It would be Dr. Haynes who would assemble the St. Clair Memorial's Auxiliary, and Mrs. W.W. Satchel was the first chairperson of the Women's Auxiliary. So this article also came from Diane Goldschmidt's scrapbook. I thought it was cute. It was, if you read on the right-hand side, on the next slide, Amanda, it said a gift of $3.20 was collected for the hospital by 8-year-old twins Carol and Jean Castelli and their younger sister Diane, along with their playmate Kathleen Wilkes, after selling violets they had collected. So you can see everybody in the community was involved in this endeavor. So the next few slides is just to show you year by year of how involved the Women's Auxiliary actually was in this project. So they would have, on the left-hand side, they would meet, their meetings would be in different members' homes. Craftier members would donate items that they would sell, like personalized stationery or apron sales. Then 1947, you could see it still goes on, numerous bazaars, card parties. A lot of this was in the newspaper. Some of it was documented in scrapbooks. By 1948, so back in 1945, when the auxiliary was formed, there was just a handful of members, but by 1948, there was 575 members. And at this point, they had already raised $14,000. So 1949 comes along, there's still garden parties, dessert meetings, house tours, dinner dances. They never failed in their enthusiasm to plan fundraisings to benefit the hospital. So in 1950, this shows you that there was a Pittsburgh Playhouse performance. It shows you the little program there. And in 1941, there was a musical event that was held at the Mellon Auditorium that would benefit the hospital. And in that picture on the left-hand side in the lower right-hand corner is Mrs. Castelli, who kept the scrapbook where a lot of these pictures came from. So 1952, we move on. There's still spring benefits and there's bake sales. 1953. Okay, this was pivotal because we were getting close to the hospital opening, and the Women's Auxiliary had set their sights on opening up the snack bar and the gift shop, and they would like to run it. However, they needed the approval of the board of directors to allocate the funds to this because they could not make any decisions on their own as far as how the money would be spent. And they did get the full endorsement from the board. So in 1954, they started planning the Harlequin Ball. I don't know if anybody out there remembers the Harlequin Balls, but they went on for 55 years. And the last one was in 2009. So Harlequin Ball was very big for these ladies. They took it very seriously, and the hospital was able to raise a lot of funds. So now we're getting down to the nitty gritty of the groundbreaking ceremony, which was 70 years ago this month. And these are a few pictures. And in the upper right-hand corner, we actually have some vials of the earth that were actually dug that day. So 70 years ago this month, the hospital groundbreaking finally took place after numerous delays. And the hospital construction would go on for 2 years and 4 months. So you can see it was through the winter months. And it was a little bit different from the original drawing that we looked at earlier. But 2 years and 4 months, the hospital was being constructed. So as we get closer, the Women's Auxiliary actually planned an open house. So on the next slide, you'll see the tables. There were 15,000 invitations that went out to the public for the upcoming open house. And the Women's Auxiliary would also provide the hospital tours. So there they are addressing their envelopes. At the open house, they would show off their new station wagon and the switchboard. And I don't know what is in the right-hand picture. It looks rather interesting, but the turnout for the open house was tremendous. So the final building, after many, many changes, especially after getting the Hill-Burton Act funds that were available, the hospital was a 116-bed facility that cost $2 million. And it would open up on February 22nd, 1954. And in this article, it says that the features of the new hospital would include intercommunication systems between patients' beds and nurses, oxygen that was piped into each room, air conditioning, and Meals on Wheels that was similar to what the airlines provided. This article also speculated on who the first patient would actually be. And so the next picture is just a picture of the very front of the hospital that's right on Bower Hill Road there. So now the hospital opens. This is actually the admission log that we have in our archives here. In the very first patient, after much anticipation, his name was Antoinette Darris, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She was the very first patient. So it turns out on the next slide that Antoinette Darris was actually a little 17-month-old girl. She was admitted to the hospital 1 hour before it actually opened because the admitting physician deemed it as a medical emergency. She was suffering from epidemic gastroenteritis and a viral infection. And everybody knew that. And once again, there was no HIPAA regulations. So that was the very first patient of St. Clair Hospital. The very first baby of St. Clair Hospital arrived the very next day on February 23rd, and her mother named her Mary Claire. So Mary Claire Barskowski would come to the hospital. On these pictures, you can see she's here at age 1, age 4, and age 20 to celebrate the anniversaries of the hospital. So I became curious to find out whatever happened to Mary Claire. And after a little bit of research, I found this article on the next slide. So in 1979, she married Simon Dunningham of Suffolk, England. Mary Claire worked as a nurse midwife for the Air Force and married Simon during her first assignment in England. Her military career ended in July 1987, and after a final stint at Langley Air Force Base, her and her husband settled in Virginia. So Mary Claire still lives there today with her husband in Virginia. That was our first baby. So changing gears a little bit here on the next slide, it was curious to me about the name choosing of the hospital. So the hospital founders intended the institution to serve as a memorial to those who died in World War II. Yet they proposed Major General Arthur St. Clair, who fought in the Revolutionary War. The hospital concluded that the Scotsman background could best embody the spirit in which the memorial was being built. But why would they name it after a Revolutionary War person if the intent was to honor those who fought in World War II? The information that I found in the documentation in the hospital was that it came from William McVeigh, who was the attorney and also an association member. But after a little bit of digging, I think it could have been more Dr. Haynes' idea. So if you go to the next slide, from Ancestry.com, I uncovered a document where Dr. Haynes had made application to the Sons of the American Revolution. And in that application, he listed his third great grandfather, Captain John Brisbane, born 1730, who fought in the Revolutionary War. And it just so happens that Captain Brisbane received a captain's commission of the 2nd Pennsylvania Battalion from Colonel Arthur St. Clair. So naming the hospital most likely was Dr. Haynes's idea and not William McVeigh's. So on the next slide was our very first logo. And as you can see, it looks a lot like a coat of arms. And trying to figure out how they came up with this coat of arms was speculative, but from what we can tell, the banner translates into commit your work to God. The banner was the St. Clair surname from Scotland, and that was their logo back then on the St. Clair their coat of arms. So the banner says, commit your work to God. The crest shows the knight, which is a representation of a military commander. That would have been Major General Arthur St. Clair. And then, of course, on the shield was the caduceus, which represented the hospital. And the supporters are on each side of the shield. Not really sure what they are. It could possibly be an eagle. The right-hand side could possibly be a stork, but I was never able to reveal who created the logo or the coat of arms, and I don't know what the supporters had meant to the logo. So moving ahead now, fast forwarding several decades, this picture shows the expansion of the hospital over the years. And as you can see on the top of the buildings, there were many, many, many expansions. That aerial view was taken recently, and it does not show our newest project, but we'll get to in a minute. But also interesting to note in the hospital's 67 years history that there's only been 3 hospital administrators. So Cortland Chanley served from 1953 to 1975. After him was Benjamin E. Sneed. He was from 1975 to 2006. And our current president and CEO, James M. Collins, has served the hospital from 2006 to the present day. That's a long history with only 3 leaders. So fast forwarding over the decades, this is a picture of our latest project, and it's the Dunlap Family Outpatient Center. It's a 280,000 square foot building, 6 stories high, and it has been the largest construction project in the hospital's 67-year history. So that wraps up a little bit of the history, not so much of all of the construction projects, but I think that when I was researching the information for the hospital, it was a story about construction. But as I unfolded a lot of the information, it became more of a story about people. And so not only the people of the community, but also the people that work here at the hospital, community involvement was key in getting St. Clair out of the ground.
Thank you for this. That's exactly what I've been thinking about, is how the entire project was community driven and supported and fundraised. I mean, that's an amazing story. And I feel lucky, we all do, to have St. Clair in our community, in our neighborhood. you take for granted sometimes driving by a hospital. I live on Scrubgrass Road and I've got this hospital in my backyard, and we are so lucky. Like everything everybody did all these years has given our community this resource. And thank you for telling us this story. I learned so many things. And I'm really excited to tell everyone that the Historical Society of Mount Lebanon and St. Clair Hospital and Mary Kay are working together to put together an exhibit that will be on display in the coming months at the Historical Society, showing these materials. Others, I know you have a lot in the collection that sort of, gives us all of this information. So we're so honored and pleased to be working with you and to be able to honor the hospital and to bring these stories to our community, because I think they're things we should all know more about. Thank you for taking the time to share this with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Amanda. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for everyone who's watched this program with us, who's supported the Historical Society, who's bid on the auction items and made all of this possible for us for this year. So thank you to Mary Kay, thank you to everyone, and have a good night. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.